Hello there YouTube, it is Ashley Catalina here, and today I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite movies, and I just want to give movie recommendations if you're looking for that, and plus it's kind of fun to just, be a nerd about movies. Without further ado, we will get started. So the first movie that I'm going to talk about is a movie called Dark Shadows. Dark Shadows has Johnny Depp in it, and it's basically about a vampire who comes back from being locked in a box for who knows how many centuries. I can't remember how many it was that it said in the movie. But anyways, there's a witch who basically cursed him to be a vampire, and she kind of comes back and he finds out he still has living descendants. So it's kind of a really interesting, quirky movie about a family of supernatural creatures. I've always found it funny, and the music in it is just really good. I almost never get tired of watching that movie. So if you haven't ever seen this movie, please check it out because I do highly recommend it. Another favorite movie of mine is Signs. It's directed by M. Night Shyamalan, and it stars Mel Gibson in it. Joaquin Phoenix is in it too. Abigail Breslin too, when she was like really little. Anyways, Signs is about a widowed man who is trying to raise his children after the death of his wife, and strange things start happening around the house. His brother has come to live with them to help raise the kids, and some weird things start happening around the world with crop circles and alien sightings. This is a really good movie about aliens. I find some of the concepts interesting too. It brings in concepts and ideas about like religion, about life and death, about like familial relationships. And ever since I was a kid and I watched it for the very first time, I've always loved this movie. Plus, I also once went through a very, very, very intense alien obsession because I was absolutely convinced they are real, but that is a story for another video. Anyways, yeah, if you haven't seen Signs, go check it out because it is amazing. And also, the theme song at the beginning is phenomenal. Another one of my favorite movies is a lovely movie called Good Will Hunting. This movie has Robin Williams in it. It's about a young man who is struggling to find his way in the world and starts to get help from a math professor who knows that this kid is a genius, and a psychology teacher. This is one of the movies that has actually made me cry and also laugh at the same time. And it's so heartwarming, and I would recommend this movie to anybody who wants to watch something that's full of emotions and that is extremely inspiring as well, and heartwarming, and full of hope. Also, the music in this movie is also very good because a lot of the songs are written and sung by Elliott Smith. So a good movie soundtrack kind of makes a movie a little bit better sometimes. Another one of my favorite movies that is kind of recent is Bohemian Rhapsody. This movie talks about the band Queen and how they kind of became a band. And this movie just really interests me. I loved it a lot more than I actually expected I would. For one, Freddie Mercury's confidence is completely inspirational. Freddie Mercury's confidence is the confidence I need in my life. And I thought all the characters are really interesting, especially the fact that they're based off of real, actual people. Plus, I really like the band Queen, and I like their songs. So, yeah. Some people say that movie's overrated. Some people say it's underrated. Whatever you think of this movie, honestly, just watch it because it's so good, and I love it. One of my all-time favorite movies is Arrival. I don't remember exactly who directed it at this current moment in time, but this movie is one of the best sci-fi movies I have ever seen in my entire life. Basically, it kind of deals with the concepts of time, language, and how language, depending on what language you speak, can change the way that you think. And when aliens come to Earth, people don't really understand their language, or if they're here to do good or if they're here to do harm. And this causes a lot of stress among different governments and around the world. So they hire this one lady who is a linguist, and she is able to figure out ways to communicate with these extraterrestrials, while at the same time she starts to see the world a little bit differently. I don't want to give too much away, but Arrival is such a great movie, and there's so many emotions in it. Like, the feels are in this movie, and it also makes you think, which I love that in movies, when it has a good amount of emotion but also makes you think. And also the special effects are amazing. So if you have not seen that movie yet, I really suggest you check it out immediately. Another movie that I really love is Edward Scissorhands. This movie was directed by Tim Burton, and I could get into a whole list of some of my favorite Tim Burton movies, but I really love a lot of the Tim Burton movies, and one of them that I absolutely adore is Edward Scissorhands. For one, the aesthetic is awesome, okay? Like, the bright colors in the town and the fashion that, like, the people wear and stuff, all those bright colors is such a contrast to Edward Scissorhands, because he wears darker clothes and he has scissors for hands, which is a very interesting concept. It's very unique and very original, which I guess could only really come from the mind of Tim Burton. But I don't know, I really like the story. I think it's heartwarming as well as heartbreaking, and it's just, if you haven't seen this movie, you need to watch it because it is good. Another movie that will always, always, always be one of my favorites is The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. This movie is very personal to me because he deals with maladaptive daydreaming, and on some level he's almost so disconnected from his world that he doesn't really live his life, and since he hasn't really lived his life and he feels this disconnect, he daydreams and he imagines things that could happen. Well, then throughout the story he's kind of pushed into this adventure where he has to travel. I really like this movie. One, because it has a David Bowie song in it, and that song is Starman, and I love David Bowie, and so that makes the movie inspiring. Plus, I kind of do a lot of daydreaming, and considering I can relate a lot to the character of Walter Mitty, it just kind of hits close to home, and I like how it shows his character development throughout the movie. This movie will always be one of my favorites. Another movie that I very much enjoy is Zombieland. I was pleasantly surprised in this movie when I watched it because it mixes comedy and horror in the perfect way. You have literally both comedy and horror mashed together. A lot of times when people try to do that with movies, it just either looks too cheesy or it's not done right. This movie, Zombieland, has totally mashed horror and comedy into one, and it's amazing. Not only that, but I really relate to the main character too. He's very nervous and kind of anxious and overthinks a lot because he kind of like narrates a story. I tend to be a little bit like that, like in my everyday life. I tend to overthink a lot of stuff and get anxious. So that's always interesting. I thought when I first started to watch it, it was just going to be like a dumb comedy movie that was just making fun of horror movies, and it wasn't really going to be that funny. But not only is it funny, as well as having great horror elements, it also has a lot of really good meaning to the story. Like, one of the best messages in this whole movie is, enjoy the little things. And that is a phrase I've always internalized and kept with me ever since watching that movie. Highly recommend it if you have not watched it already. And I hear they're making a Zombieland 2. I don't really know if it's going to be good or not. I'm unsure. I hope it's good. Sometimes sequels aren't always as good as the first movie, but sometimes they actually turn out to be pretty okay. So when this movie comes out, I'm just gonna try to keep my expectations low, and if I'm pleasantly surprised, I'm pleasantly surprised, and if I'm disappointed, then I have not been too disappointed, I suppose. Next on the list is a movie titled Coraline, also directed by Tim Burton. It is animated. This movie is about a little girl who is really disappointed in her life. She's mad that she had to move to a new town, that she has to go to a new school, and her parents kind of dismiss her. They don't really pay her attention, and she feels really misunderstood throughout the majority of the story, so she wishes for something better. And then as she's exploring this old house that her family has moved into, she finds a little door, and this door leads to like an alternate universe, but in this alternate universe, her parents actually care about her, and they will cook for her. They're a lot more lively, they spend more time with her, and it seems like a dream come true. The kicker is that the people in this alternate universe have button eyes, which kind of gives off, that Tim Burton kind of weird, creepy vibe, There's also a talking black cat, one of my favorite characters in this entire movie. One, because I love cats, and two, because it's a talking cat and the stuff he says is great. I also think that the theme music for Coraline is really good. And some people as kids when they watched it, I know, got really freaked out by it. This movie was one of the movies I wasn't so much freaked out by as I was fascinated, because I just thought it was so cool and so interesting, and I was like, whoa, that's so cool, because I'd never heard of the concept of like a parallel universe before, and I was like, that's so cool. So a lot of people have watched this movie, but if you haven't, I do recommend it. So don't worry guys, if you're getting tired of this, I'm almost done. I have 2 more movies to talk about. So the next one I'm going to talk about actually is a movie called The Passengers. It stars Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt, and this is also a sci-fi movie. It's set far off into the future, and Earth, the Earth that we live on like right now, in this storyline, is kind of like falling apart. And so many people have volunteered to leave Earth to go live on a new habitable planet. So they go on the spaceship for however many years. While they're on the spaceship, the whole ship is like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's on autopilot? Yeah, autopilot. It's on autopilot. That's the word I'm looking for. Yay me. Okay, so yeah. Well, also the people who have decided to go to this new Earth and start a new future have to live their lives in like a stasis, like a sleep, and they're not supposed to be woken up until like 4 years, if I remember correctly, before they actually land on this new planet. Well, in this movie, the character Chris Pratt plays ends up waking up, and he doesn't know how to get back to sleep, and he realizes that they're not as close to the new planet that he thought they were. So he lives a period of time being pretty lonely and trying to survive, and then Jennifer Lawrence's character comes in, and she's also awake. And so they're trying to figure out, how to survive. It's kind of like a survival story / love story / sci-fi adventure type thing. Personally, this is one of the movies that I really, really love, and it has a lot of deeper questions in it that I think are really interesting to think about. Like, if you were in this kind of situation, what would you do? How long could you handle being alone? It's a really good movie, and if you haven't seen it already, go check it out. And my last movie that's on my list has gotten mixed reviews, but it's one of my favorites. This movie is called The Giver. The Giver, the movie, is based off of the book by Lois Lowry of the same name, There's also a whole series about it if you want to go check out those books. And a lot of people kind of gave this movie mixed reviews because it didn't follow the book exactly. There were some things that were a little bit altered, but when I watched this movie, I can't even put into words how amazed that I felt. It was different than the book in some ways, but yet the central themes were the same, and I really liked that. Plus, I feel like the movie kind of gave us a different perspective, or like a slightly different version of the original story. And so it was also super, super, super amazing. There is an alarm going off in the other room, so please ignore that. I will continue now. The Giver is one of my favorite movies. It makes me emotional. So, what's The Giver about, you're probably wondering, because now I'm just blabbing about why it's awesome and why I love it. So, in this future society, the main character, Jonas, has reached the age where people are assigned their jobs. Everything is scientifically made to fit your life that you'd be best at. Well, throughout this story, you see that a lot of these characters have to take a medicine, and this medicine kind of is supposed to be what keeps people safe and happy. Well, Jonas is not given one of the typical jobs. He is given a very special job in this society, and that is the role of the receiver. And he has to go see the Giver. For one, when he starts seeing the Giver, he realizes that some things about the world that he lives in have been hiding some of the truths. The people in the society only see the world in black and white. Jonas is able to see color. He stops taking the medicine. He starts to feel emotions. He falls in love with one of his friends. And then one day, his father brings home a baby from the nursery. And what happens in the society is, if you're assigned the role of a birth mother, your job is to basically have babies, and then the babies are assigned to each family, because each family, I don't know if they explain this in the movie, but in the book each family is only allowed to have like 2 kids. Well, the dad happens to work in this nursery, and one of the babies is having issues getting to sleep. So he decides to help the other babies in the nursery rest better. He takes this baby home. Jonas and the rest of his family kind of bond with this baby, but Jonas really bonds with this baby in particular. And as the story progresses, he realizes that the world that he lives in has been hiding things, and that if he doesn't save this baby soon, something bad will happen. So, as he's learning from the Giver, who is like his mentor, about the memories of the world, about colors and emotions, he learns about himself, and he learns about love. And this movie, it really tugs at my heartstrings, and I'm not 100% sure why, but this movie will forever be one of my favorites. I also really like the music in it too, so I guess that also helps, but I really love the movie adaptation of The Giver. So I hope you guys all enjoyed me geeking out about movies for this long, and my next few videos are probably going to be on book reviews or some of my favorite TV shows. So please hit that like button and subscribe for some more amazing content. Peace, love, and harmony. Bye everybody.
Hey YouTube, I hope you are looking forward to my next video. And enjoy the cat ears.